Hello and welcome to Multi Movie Monday. I'm your host, Wade Universe, and I do not actually look like this. I just thought I'd do it for night Halloween aesthetic. So, anyways, when I am not telling you scary stories that may or may not be true and may or may not be based on your life, so you might be going to hell, I'm here in my own universe reviewing movies, and today it is Scary Story Day. I bet a lot of people probably thought I was going to review scary stories to tell in the dark as well as Goosebumps. How many hands? How many hands? A couple of you? Well, it new. Um, it is my intention to maybe review not Goosebumps, but maybe Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark at some point. But no. Instead, we're taking a look at two other movies that are some of my favorite movies, and I highly recommend both of them even before we get to the ending of this thing. But we have to talk about these movies respectively, and so the first one that we're going to talk about is John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, one of my personal favorite films of all time. So, let's not beat around the bush. Let's start off Scary Story Day the right way with John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, which is loosely based on H.P. Lovecraft stories, in my opinion, probably the Call of Cthulhu, as well as Shadows over Isthmus. You'll soon see what I mean, but I highly recommend that you watch this movie. So, I'm going to try not to spoil as much as I can with this review. So, let's take a look at John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness. I just had to fix something with you. In the Mouth of Madness begins, brutally enough, at a mental institution run by John Glover. Yes, the Riddler of Batman the Animated Series runs a mental institution. I don't get it either. In walks a detective known only as John Trent, played by Sam Neill of Jurassic Park fame, who's instituted into the institution because he hears voices and he suddenly had gone schizophrenic, too much to his confusion. He's visited by a detective who believes that he not had gone insane, but had probably unlocked a lot more than that, wondering where Trent is, just so he can hear his story, and what a story it is. Before he went insane, John Trent was a famous detective, and he was a very good police officer, including finding people, and that was his specialty, was basically mostly finding people and folks that have gone missing. However, put on a happy face is not indeed what happens here, as he's soon attacked by an ex-maniac. No, I don't know who this guy is, but he suddenly had to ask John Trent a question. Trent is confused as to what the reason is behind this, and a lot of people assume it's because of Sutter Kane, played by Jürgen Prochnow. New book is coming out, and everybody is excited for it, and thus have gone basically mentally crazy. It's not long before Trent is hired on by the probably famous actor in this, Charlton Heston, who hires him on to try to find where Sutter Kane went to, since the whole world is practically looking for him. So we go on a road trip with Charlton Heston's secretary, and no, I don't know her name, truthfully, and she's not really an important character, to try to find out what happened to Sutter Kane. Turns out Kane, who is a horror writer, if in case you didn't know, wrote himself into one of his books, Hobbs and Horror, truthfully, and much to their confusion, they found where he is. With much to their horror to find out that not only is Sutter Kane basically God in this universe, but he's also as well pulling the strings and making everything that you think wouldn't happen, happens just as it occurs in his story. Everything that's in, well, an H.P. Lovecraft story or a horror story suddenly comes to life, like haunted paintings, people going crazy, psychotic people on the loose, etc., etc. It's not before long that I believe the woman named Linda ends up finding Sutter Kane, played by Jürgen Prochnow, who is writing the greatest story ever written, but he is not entirely his own idea, as he soon tells her. It's in fact his creation of his superiors. Who are his superiors? Well, of course, they're H.P. Lovecraftian creatures. That makes sense to how Twilight got written anyways, but John doesn't believe in these fairy tales and he wants off. But it doesn't take him long to realize that everything that's happened in the book is true, and that while he tried to prove he's a real man, he has a real life and everything. Turns out, nope, he's actually a fictional character. In the Mouth of Madness is a great and fantastic look into a horror film like never seen before, and even though I've watched this film a bunch of times already, it still begs to come back and rewatch because I still don't know what to think of it, even though that's a good movie, but I still don't know what to think of it. Every actor in this movie is just foreign terrific. Sam Neill as John Trent is a masterpiece. Jürgen Prochnow, and especially Charlton Heston are all great in this film. For the most part, the movie is a psychological thriller, and let me tell you, for John Carpenter as its director, he does a fantastic job at making this psychological horror like nothing you've ever seen before, such as like Halloween or even The Thing that I covered last week. Without spoilers, the ending of the movie will have you guessing what exactly happened, but demanding that you rewatch it about 1,000 times over to understand it, and you should because In the Mouth of Madness is nothing but a pure horror and Halloween classic. If you're a fan of H.P. Lovecraft or you're a fan of Stephen King, or just a fan of John Carpenter really, I highly of highest regards recommend In the Mouth of Madness. You will certainly be lost in the madness yourself, and you won't believe what actually happens in this film. The only thing afterwards, you have one thing to ask yourself. Have you lived any good books lately, my dears? Have you? John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness is not probably for everybody because it involves a certain audience to really get invested in it. Of course, anybody that is a diehard John Carpenter fan should exactly see this movie. That's the whole point. And of course, with Halloween Ends coming out this, I believe Friday, it is recommended that you do check, or has already been out as of Friday. Everybody should check out John Carpenter's cult classic films, especially this one, which probably not too many people have heard of. But if you love H.P. Lovecraft or John Carpenter, you should check this film out. Our next film comes from us from the great place of Spain and or Mexico, with Guillermo del Toro and talking about Pan's Labyrinth, a horror fantasy film, if you will, and actually a great one too. It doesn't have that much horror in it, but it's still recommended to be seen by any and all fans, even if you're a fantasy lover, kind of like me. And also, yes, Guillermo del Toro is the director of Pacific Rim and Hellboy, and hopefully that he will get Hellboy 3 off the ground. One can hope. But let's review Pan's Labyrinth. And you know how I said Mexico and Spain? Yeah, keep that in mind because I have something to say about this film that you might not believe me about. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to rip this right off from the gate as quick as a band-aid because this film is done entirely in Spanish without an English subtrack. Don't believe me? Watch and learn.
La cegó y borró de su memoria cualquier indicio del pasado. La princesa olvidó quién era, de dónde venía.
Now, for people that speak Spanish, they understood all of that without the closed captioning. For me, I have no idea, and yes, I watch movies with closed captioning because I'm deaf and I can't hear my movies, so screw you too. Our movie mainly focuses on a little girl named Ophelia who believes in fairy tales, loves fairy tales, and her mother is pregnant with her son that is soon to be born, and Ophelia is happy for a new addition to her family. She is, however, not happy that she has to live at a military camp inspired by her stepfather, only known as the Capitan. Yeah, he's only known as Capitan in this movie. And in case you're wondering if the Capitan is the villain of this movie, hell to the yes, but I won't spoil why he's the villain of this movie, but you will love to hate him as much as I do because every time I see this movie, I just have to hate him more and more, but dear God, I love this actor's performance as the asshole. Late at night, Ophelia is visited by a grasshopper, but in fact it's not a grasshopper at all, and I don't know if you'd believe me or not, it's actually a fairy in disguise. He brings Ophelia to meet the fawn, played by mastermind of makeup himself, Doug Jones. And dear God, he does amazing as the fawn. He tells Ophelia specifically to follow the storybook and to do everything that the storybook tells her, and that he will be back to visit her sometime soon. So Ophelia opens up the book at first, and there's nothing. It's not until later when she suddenly realizes that the book comes to life and tells her exactly what she needs to do, basically making this a scary story because the story drags on the plot very similar to John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness telling her to go to an old abandoned tree. This old abandoned tree is dying because of a fat frog. No, I'm not joking. The tree is literally dying because of a fat frog inside of it. Don't believe me? Watch. See, I told you the tree is dying because it has a fat frog in it. Ophelia's stepfather is stuck inside the damn thing. Bad joke aside, she actually does meet the actual legitimate frog. And if yes, you don't like frogs being killed in gratuitous fashion, then you might not want to watch the next scene of how he dies. However, she goes back to the fawn after she found a key that the frog swallowed. Again, I'm not going to show how he died. And the fawn tells her the story about, well, the woman that got away. Yeah, no spoilers or anything, but you can probably put it together. However, the next day when Ophelia thinks that the book is going to talk to her, the book immediately turns red. Well, the book apparently has started its period. No, instead something else more horrible is happening. Ophelia's mother is sadly giving birth, and the baby is gonna fight its way out of her one way or another, and with dire birth consequences, however. Thankfully, Ophelia's mother does survive, but sadly, it is not without its consequences that the doctor tells her that the Capitan that she needs to take it easy, otherwise she'll cause major stress and disaster to the baby before it is born. Before Ophelia captures her next task, the fawn gives her a day off and tells her to plant this root underneath her mother and the baby will be fine, as long as she feeds the root milk and also gives it blood every so daily, and it should keep the baby in perfect health. After Ophelia's task is done, she checks the book and finds out that the next place that she has to go is where the film's probably most infamous moment comes from, the Pale Man. While the film doesn't show it, the Pale Man, also played by Doug Jones, is a child eater. He eats and devours children. Well, thankfully the film doesn't show us Ophelia or her brother being eaten. The painting on the wall does make it all the more obvious, and I love when the Pale Man is activated. Doug Jones is completely a master at this. Look at this thing. It's horrifying to look at, but you can't look away. It's beautifully horrifying and, oh dear God, I love it. But aside from focusing on mostly Ophelia for this movie, the movie also focuses on the aspect of World War II in Spain, and primarily how things got really well out of hand, especially in Spain most of all. Oh, and about the Capitan being an asshole? No, I wasn't kidding. I'm not gonna tell you what he does to this poor soldier that has a stuttering problem, but just note, he doesn't survive, in case you couldn't tell. And I don't think I need to tell you what he's going to do with those tools. Put it together, my dear viewers. Put it together because I'm not gonna show you what happens. Later that night, the fawn comes to visit Ophelia to wonder about the job that she did. But he finds out that she failed her job when the fairy tells him that she ate the food, and the fawn gets pissed off and leaves her be. However, it's not long before the Capitan shows us, the viewers, of what was going on behind the scenes and Ophelia making her brother feel better. And of course, he gets pissed off and wondering what the hell is going on here. And so, as he throws the baby root inside of the fire, you can assume what happened to Ophelia's mother from here on out, as the baby root suddenly burns as symbolism. Sadly, the baby does survive, but unfortunately, the mom doesn't, as Ophelia's mother is later buried, and with a good funeral to honor her, especially her daughter left to ponder what will happen. Ophelia is walked into a room after she's been kidnapped by the Capitan by trying to escape his ridiculous regime. Again, see this movie. She's visited by the fairies and eventually the fawn. Fawn tells Ophelia to go to the garden where she first met him and bring her brother, but all they need from her brother is just a prick of blood. That's all. And if she succeeds, she can forever rejoin the kingdom because she's the princess that was missing before. Not spoiler. So not only does later on Ophelia does end up bringing her brother there, but as you can see, war has ravaged throughout the lands and really does make the film a lot more darker when especially the war breaks out later on in the film. And yes, slight spoiler, Ophelia does actually die in this film, but you'll be happy to know that she was supposed to. Doesn't that make you guys feel better? No? Well, just like in Hellboy, she ends up joining the Golden Kingdom or something, and she ends up back alongside her family that she had lost from day before as the Faunus plan for her to rejoin in the Kingdom of Heaven. If you want a unique and more aspect and different kind of movie to see, especially for this Halloween season, that is a kind of horror but goes above and beyond it, I highly recommend Pan's Labyrinth. While granted, it is mostly a film that is also of dark fantasy and mostly focuses on fantasy, I highly recommend it for anyone who is curious to see it and also for a new film to watch this Halloween season. So, my final thoughts, you're probably thinking? Well, I highly recommend both of these movies, but I would probably highly recommend Pan's Labyrinth a lot more than In the Mouth of Madness, and here's why. You see, usually I am the guy that does like unique horror films, and Pan's Labyrinth, while it is a dark fantasy, it also is played out like a horror film, especially later on when she loses her brother, she meets the Pale Man. Right after she meets the Pale Man, the whole film goes straight into almost horror movie territory. And really, when you think about it, isn't war technically horror? I mean, these things that are happening to these poor, brave men and women that are fighting for the country, isn't that a horror story in and of itself? So, really, Pan's Labyrinth hit the target and really nailed it, to be honest. Just note, I know that a lot of people are going to complain when I say this, you have to watch the movie with subtitles. There is no English track. A friend of mine tried to prove me wrong, and he was wrong, and I proved him that I was right. So this film is definitely all in Spanish. So either watch with closed captioning like me, because I'm a deaf person, and if you have complaints, I don't care, or subtitles. But Pan's Labyrinth, I would recommend first. It's a little bit over John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, but both ways you're getting a good dosage. And In the Mouth of Madness is a wonderful and superb horror movie, and I have never seen anything as original or as unique or even iconic as In the Mouth of Madness. Sam Neill, Jurgen Prochnow, even frickin' John Glover does a fantastic job in this. So if you really wanted to see where John Glover what else he was in aside from voicing Riddler on Batman the Animated Series, check out In the Mouth of Madness. And also just to let you guys know, there is hardly any body horror in The Mouth of Madness. There's not any like John Carpenter blood scenes like there is in Halloween or The Thing or a lot of his other movies. It's basically mostly a psychological horror thriller, and if you know me, I am a sucker for psychological horror. So again, I highly recommend watching both of these films. Next week, however, a lot of people are going to be excited, including me as well, because next week we are going into Of the Dead Day, as we're taking a look at two of my favorite movies zombie movies that I have in my collection. And I know that a lot of people might be disappointed with the ones that I review because they probably aren't thinking of the one that they want. And well, to be fair, there are more zombie movies out there that I do plan to review, even if not for Halloween. So just keep that in mind because there's a ton of movies that share similar themes that I will review any other day of the week. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and also spread the word about this channel if you like it so much. Follow me on Twitter, share the videos on Twitter, that sort of thing. Get word of mouth out there. And if you want to follow me at Twitter yourself, you can with the link in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next Multi Movie Monday. Because remember, 20 more Mondays, 20 more movies, and until next time.